Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Esperanza. I'm a full-time content creator with a background in interior design, living in Pittsburgh with my fiance Skylar and our Labradoodle Indio. We are actually originally from Eastern Washington, but we moved over to this side of the country. We moved from Portland, Oregon, where we've been living for about 5 years, to Nashville because rent and homes were a lot less expensive over on this side of the country. We lived in Nashville for about 8 months, and then we moved here to Pittsburgh, where we have been for almost 2 years now. So I thought it would be fun to do a pros and cons comparison of these 3 cities that I've been living in for the past 5 years. I've actually done official pros and cons videos for all 3 of these cities, which I'll link down below, but this video is actually going to be comparing all 3 of them at the same time. So I'll go through pros and cons for each city and kind of add little things here and there comparing the 3 cities. So I'm hoping that this video will be helpful for those of you considering moving to any of these 3 cities. But before we get into the video, please make sure that you guys are subscribed if you're not already, and also be sure to turn on bell notifications so you guys will be notified whenever I have a new video. And please share my channel so that you guys can help me grow my YouTube channel. Okay, so we are going to be starting off with Portland, Oregon. It has been about 3+ years since I've lived there, so please keep that in mind. But my #1 pro for Portland would probably have to be that they have an amazing coffee scene, restaurant scene, great foodie scene. They have a lot of really condensed shopping streets. So just to name a few, there's Burnside, Hawthorne, Alberta, Mississippi, Division, Northwest 23rd, and the list goes on. So there's definitely tons to do there. Another pro for Portland, Oregon would be that it's only about an hour and a half to the Oregon coast, and then in the opposite direction, it's only an hour and a half from Mount Hood. So there's a lot of outdoor recreational stuff to do if you also like nature. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, city living and lots of nearby nature. Portland also has a lot of great tourist attractions, from the International Rose Test Garden and the Japanese Garden to Howell's Books and Voodoo Donuts downtown, and so many more iconic spots. And Pittsburgh and Nashville also have plenty of their own tourist attractions and iconic spots, but I feel like Portland definitely takes the cake on that one. So my #1 con for Portland, and the main reason why we actually ended up moving away from Portland, is the fact that rent and the cost of buying homes have gone up exponentially to where it's just way too expensive, at least for us, to have wanted to stay there, because it would have taken a lot longer for us to eventually be able to buy a home, which is one of our main goals right now. So when we were living there, we had a 2-bedroom apartment with my sister, which was $1,250. So you would think that that wasn't too much. Mind you, that was 3 to 4 years ago now, but it was in a really bad area of Portland with a lot of sketchy stuff going on in that area. So it wasn't super safe, and for that reason I think it was at that price, although it was remodeled and relatively cute. And there was actually a home on that very same street that was for sale. It was kind of a cute little cottage house, and it was for sale for around $450,000 in, like I said, one of the worst areas in Portland. So if you can imagine, I talked to a lot of Portland natives while I was living there, and they told me that the cost of homes and rent had really gone up rapidly in the past 15 to 20 years as the city grew at a really quick rate. Which leads me to my second con, which is how bad the traffic is there. And the #1 reason would be because, like I said, the city grew at such a quick scale that they couldn't quite keep up with it. And while I was living there, they were doing a ton of construction on all of the freeway systems to try to alleviate these traffic problems. So by now that might be a little bit better. I'm not 100% sure, but it was definitely a con while we were living there because it made it really hard for us to get around to certain parts of the city. My third con for Portland would be the fact that it rains there a large majority of the year, so it's also very gloomy a large portion of the year. Some people actually like that, or at least they don't mind it, so maybe that's not a super big con for some people. Overall, we actually really loved Portland. It was just the fact that it was too expensive for renting or buying a home that ended up being the main reason for us leaving Portland. Okay, so next up is Nashville, which is a very unique, very historic music city, particularly for country music, but also rock and roll. And because of this, they have a very big popular music scene, including Broadway Street, where you'll find a ton of honky tonks. It is a main tourist attraction in Nashville. Another pro for Nashville is the fact that everyone there is very friendly. You definitely get that feeling of Southern charm, especially with customer service at restaurants and stores. And also just walking down the street, people will say hi to you, something that you won't really experience in Pittsburgh, but you will experience in Portland, just on probably a more friendlier scale, I guess I'd say, in the South. Not everyone, of course, but overall I would say you definitely get more of that like friendly feel. Another pro for Nashville is that for a very major city, the rent and cost of buying homes is actually relatively quite a bit less compared to other parts of the country, like Portland, as I was mentioning, or other places on like the West Coast, East Coast. For a major city, it's pretty affordable to rent and buy homes, which was one of the main reasons why we originally moved there. We actually had a nightmare situation happen with the apartment that we had lined up. So we ended up moving into a brand new apartment complex in Antioch. So we weren't in like Nashville proper. We were on like the outskirts of it, and we were paying, I think, about $13.50 or something like that for that apartment. So it was brand new, but it was really far from like the main downtown area of Nashville. So that was a bit of a con for us at the time, but the apartment was renovated and very nice and new. And the apartment that we lived in Portland was still Portland proper, but like on the very furthest edges as well, and that was $12.50 for a 2-bedroom, but it was much smaller than the 1-bedroom apartment that we were renting in Nashville for $13.50. That was like twice the size as the little 2-bedroom apartment in Portland. So just to give you guys a little idea, and then the homes that we were looking at when we were doing research, I think were anywhere from like $200,000 up. Maybe you could find some for like $150,000 that maybe needed some work, but probably more in like that $250,000 and up range for something that was still in Nashville, but somewhat move-in ready. Maybe just needs like a little bit of updating, and that was now 3 years ago, so it's probably gone up since then. So my number one con for Nashville would be the fact that it is in Tornado Alley, something that we didn't think about a ton when we moved there, because I really had never heard of tornadoes happening in Nashville much, but pretty much right when we moved there, within like the first couple weeks, the worst tornado in 20 years hit Nashville, and also the city went into lockdown, as did the rest of the country. So we definitely didn't move there at a very good time, to be fair, because a lot of things were shut down while we lived there for a large majority of the time. And then while we lived there, there were like constant thunder and rainstorms, lots of power outages, and tornado warnings almost constantly. So it was just too much for us, and that was the main reason why we ended up leaving Nashville. My second con is that Nashville definitely had the worst drivers I've ever seen. I swear there was an accident almost every single time I left my house, and just people driving like crazy and not abiding by any kinds of rules, which I found so irritating and anxiety driving. My third con for Nashville would be that the shopping areas are a lot more spread out, although they do have some really cute, more modern cafes, coffee shops, restaurants, boutiques, things like that, but they're just more spread out. A couple of shopping streets to name off the top of my head would be like Hillsborough Avenue, 12th South, and then besides that, it's more like smaller areas of shopping. So like maybe in Germantown, the Gulch, in East Nashville, the shopping's quite spread out. So just things are a lot more spread out, whereas in Portland, they have more condensed shopping streets. Pittsburgh has some as well, but more probably towards the side of Nashville, Portland had the most. Okay, so moving on to Pittsburgh. My number one pro for Pittsburgh would be that it is a very old historic city, so there is a lot of amazing architecture all over the city, really stunning, beautiful old historic homes and mansions all over the cities, as well as beautiful cathedrals. So there's definitely a lot of unique charm to the city itself. My second pro would have to be that it is close to a lot of major cities, which is actually why we moved here. It's close to Philadelphia, New York, DC, Cleveland. A little bit further would be like Chicago, Detroit, Boston. I'm probably missing quite a few things, but in general, there are so many major US cities over in this part of the country, so it's kind of centrally located close to a lot of cities. That would make it easier for me to cover on my blog, The Urban Darling. So although we've been moving quite a lot in the past 5 years, it's also been really good for my blog and for me to be able to cover as many cities as possible. Okay, so this last pro is a little bit of a double-edged sword because you can find very affordable rent and housing here. However, usually that's because the apartments and houses themselves are very old and need quite a bit of work. So when we first moved here, we were looking at some apartments that were in the $850 to $1,000 range. You can even find some that are in like the $600 to $800 range, but they're usually in apartment buildings that are very old, and I'm talking kind of like layers of paint, just definitely needing some work. We were able to find an apartment that was a little bit more renovated inside, although it has plenty of its own cons as well. But you can also find really nice, renovated, brand new apartment complexes that have been popping up all over the city. And those are going to be more in the range of like $1,300 to $1,500. And then if you want something super nice, probably $1,700 and up. So we live in a 1,000 square foot loft apartment near East Liberty, and we are paying almost $1,200, which is about the same size as the Nashville apartment that we were living in for $1,350, but we're much closer to all that Pittsburgh has to offer. We were actually trying to buy a home here for $100,000 just outside of Pittsburgh, but we actually ended up losing that home, and it was definitely one of the worst situations that we've ever been through. If you guys want to know more on that story, I did a whole storytime video on it, which I will link for you guys. And then we've just been renting ever since, and we're still saving to try to buy a home again, and we'll be much better prepared next time. Okay, I'm going to quickly go through some of the cons of Pittsburgh. The first con would be that because it's an old city, it seems like they're always doing construction and remodeling all over the city, which can definitely be a bit of a pain as far as like driving and traffic sometimes, stuff like that. It also gets extremely cold here in the winter, something to do I think with like Canada, don't quote me on that, but it gets very cold in the winter and it can also get very hot in the summer, so you kind of get both. And also it's one of the cities in the US that gets the least amount of sunlight, which I did not know, and is definitely not very good for what I do as far as being an work from home full-time content creator. And the last con would be that there are a lot of sewage problems, also because it's an old city, so that can lead to smells at certain times of the year. And then of course, going hand in hand with that is the old apartments, old roads, and old homes that need a lot of work. Overall, we do really like Pittsburgh, and it has a lot of charm, and I have seen that there are a ton of new spots popping up all over the city that are a little bit more trendy, upscale, modern, like Field Day in Lawrenceville and Market House. So that's very exciting for me. The people here are definitely not as friendly as in Nashville or even as friendly as in Portland, so that's a bit of a bummer. We definitely plan on being here for at least a few more years. We'll see, but we may end up going on another moving adventure to a different part of the country in the next couple of years. I'll definitely let you guys know whenever we decide on that. Okay guys, so that is it for this video. I hope that you guys found this video helpful. I also have blog post travel guides for all 3 of these cities, which I'll link down below for you guys in case you guys are considering moving to any of these cities. Those guides should definitely be more helpful. If you guys aren't subscribed already, please consider subscribing for more content like this. I also cover travel, thrift, home, and basically all that kind of fun stuff here on my channel. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and also be sure to share my channel with a friend so you guys can help me grow my YouTube channel. I upload 2 videos a week on Friday and Sunday, so be sure to check back and subscribe for more. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!